Good evening and welcome. My name is Anne Bak Marine, and I'm the Executive Director for Eisenhower Dance Detroit. And we are thrilled that you've joined us this evening for a very special presentation of the Five Tangos. This project was originally envisioned for a live theater production. It was supposed to be premiered in November of 2020 at the Detroit Film Theater at the DIA. With the onset of the pandemic and the closure of theaters, the collaborators got together and sort of reimagined how the work could still come to fruition, but in a completely different format. Eisenhower Dance Detroit's artistic director, Stephanie Pizzo, reached out to film director Zach Hagee at Zazu Creative Studio. And through the ongoing collaboration with the Detroit Institute of Art, we were able to create a film version and completely reimagine what you're about to see. Each of these five tangos was filmed at an iconic Detroit Metro location: the Crystal Gallery at the DIA, the Guardian Building, the Scarab Club, and two different rooms within Meadowbrook Mansion. Please don't go anywhere after the film, because we will have a live interactive talk back with some of our key artists. We'll have one of our dancers, Emmy Bezbachenko from Eisenhower Dance, along with artistic director Stephanie Pizzo, film director Zach Hagee. And we are really looking forward to getting your questions, taking a deeper dive into the artistic process and an understanding of how our collaborators arrived at the finished product that you're about to see. Well, I don't want to keep you any further. I'm so excited to see this film. We're all thrilled to share it with you. I want to especially thank Larry Baranski, the Director of Public Programming at the DIA, for really being the driving force behind making sure this project still happened. So please enjoy the Five Tangos. Wow. I'm absolutely breathless after watching it, and I've seen this film a couple of times before this premiere this evening in preparation. In some of the comments, which thank you all for the amazing feedback. One point of clarification is that this was filmed over a period of 2 or 3 days, and I'll let some of the artists involved speak a little bit more about that. Tonight was our premiere of this film. And now what I would like to do is introduce the choreographer and artistic visionary for this project, my friend and colleague, Stephanie Pizzo.
Hello.
Hi, Stephanie.
Here. Hi.
Um, I'm going to kind of kick things off with, we're going to do, folks who are watching, a Q&A here. And if you have any questions that you'd like to pose to our film director, Stephanie Pizzo, the artistic director, and the other artists that I introduce along the way, please go ahead and put those questions in the comments. And we'll take a look at those and pose those. But I'm going to kind of kick off the questions here. I love this part of my job because I get to dive in a little bit deeper with some of these artists. Stephanie, I've got a two-part question for you. The first is, what did you hear in Piazzolla's music that inspired you to create this work? And then the second piece of the question is, how did the original intent, the original direction that you were going, how was it affected by the pandemic? So first speak about the music and then about the pandemic, if you would.
Sure. As a choreographer, I think an artist, I do find music as an inspiration sometimes. And what I love, and I'm sure you could understand and appreciate in his music, is just the pure passion in the work. And so I've always been drawn to his music because it just fills my soul. I have that kind of same passion. And so wanting to choreograph to a piece of his music was always something that had been on, kind of my choreographic vision for one at some point in time. And as you had mentioned earlier in the evening, that this was set to be a live performance of the Five Tangos. And back then, when I was thinking about the work, I didn't have a real clear vision, except for the fact that I loved the music and I wanted to, choreograph to it. And be that as it may, I feel that things happen the way they're supposed to happen, and unfortunately the pandemic happened and we had to move to a film. The more that I researched the piece of music, this particular Five Tangos, I've, learned more about that. They were inspired by Piazzolla's kind of his way of expressing this concern that he had over this illness. He had learned of a grave illness that he'd had, and that inspired him to create these Five Tangos in collection. And as I was moving through the pandemic, it just felt so parallel to what we were feeling. I almost felt like, one, we were having a tango with this virus that we didn't know anything about, and two, I just felt like every piece, each emotion was something that I think each and every one of us experienced at some point with the virus. So it felt very serendipitous, I think, to have it all kind of culminate together into this film.
Really interesting, especially drawing those parallels. And I love the way
I drew the movement from that as well. The dancers and I talked a bit about it, as we were workshopping the movement and how we felt with each piece. The fear factor of all of it, the despair and the anxiety that we had with it, yet you come to a place where that love and support are the one things that are going to get you through, and it, even that whole dream state, I felt like at first it didn't feel like it was real. We were so and so it was really cathartic almost to kind of be able to go through those emotions. They were so at the surface for all of us because we created it during quarantine. And the fact that I actually only worked with 2 dancers at a time, we were in separate rooms, I wasn't able to work with everybody collectively. So it's just, sometimes the universe works that way. And, I'm really proud of the work that has come out of it.
Well, and the fact that the dancers are wearing masks really roots this work in a certain time and space,
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
and we know that this is about the pandemic, and it will be talking with Emmy Bezbachenko, one of the dancers, in just a couple minutes, and maybe get her take on what it was like dancing with that mask. But first, I would like to introduce now Zach Hagee, our film director from Zazu Creative Studio. Hi, Zach.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. So the burning question here is, have you filmed for dance in this capacity before?
Not in this capacity. I've done a few personal projects. I filmed like a self-portrait kind of film of myself during the pandemic, coincidentally enough. But I've always been interested in dance, especially how much it complements film and camera movement. But no, from like the capacity we did, this is the first time I've done it.
Really interesting. Were there sort of unique challenges with being on location filming dance versus, having the dancers on stage in the theater?
I would say no, because you don't know what you don't know type of thing. I've never filmed dancing in a theater. So, I mean, filming anywhere on location obviously has its challenges opposed to somewhere that has everything kind of set for you. I'm assuming the same thing, obviously being a dancer too, some of our locations, some of the ceilings were shorter. We were sweeping up dust, like there's, from our side, not necessarily, but I obviously know from a whole picture, totally, there's definitely some differences.
Well, and speaking about the differences, we're going to introduce Emmy Bezbachenko now, one of our dancers. Hi, Emmy.
Hi, how are you?
Thanks for joining us tonight. The question here is, dance for film, very different experience. Coming from a dance background myself, having been a former dancer with the company, I never did dance for film. It wasn't really a thing very much back in my day. How did this feel different? How did you approach your work differently for this versus what you do for the traditional stage?
Yeah, for the traditional stage, on the proscenium stage, it is way more flat. And with the live audience not being there on film, it is different. So I think finding the more genuine, raw emotion through the film was interesting to find, just because you do have the opportunity to take it over and over again and really send that message across rather than it just being a one-time live performance. So that was pretty interesting to find the many takes, but to connect to the audience through the camera and showing that emotion rather than seeing it on the stage and getting the full experience was definitely a challenge. Dancing in the mask was difficult to fully get the expression across with only the eyes and the full body. So I think that as a dancer was challenging, to not be able to use your full face, but it did test us as artists to think differently and how to really get that story across while just using the body and the eyes without really truly getting to use what we're used to on the live audience and the live stage. So I think that was a little bit more challenging. But other than that, it was a great experience to really work with film and be able to take it over and over again rather than just the one-time performance in the live theater.
Right. Well, and we have a question from Leslie. She asks for Stephanie and Zach, can you talk about the collaboration in terms of using the natural light in each of the spaces and editing from multiple camera angles? I don't know who wants to dive in first. Maybe Zach, do you want to dive into answering that a little bit first?
Yeah, absolutely. So the natural light, yeah, I mean, when Stephanie and I were kind of talking about this, to break it down even more, there's the five emotions more or less, and that kind of really directed what our tone and feel would be. So some of the earlier ones, we did use a lot of natural light, mainly natural light, and a little bit of fill. But those emotions are much more happier and brighter, and we wanted them to feel that way. And then when you get further into the film, there's some darker and deeper emotions, and those, obviously the last one had the most artificial lighting, and we kind of shaped the light. We used a lot of moodier colors, like the reds and oranges. But yeah, it was a collaboration from the beginning, kind of deciding those factors. I'm happy to jump on the other one too, unless you want to, Steph, the second part.
Go right ahead, Zach. I was going to say the lighting and the camera work was, all masterminded by Zach, and he's been such a joy to work with. So yeah, you go right ahead and tell him how you did that, because I was just as mesmerized, as impressed as everybody else.
So yeah, I mean, going into the post side of things, I guess how we shot it, it's funny because when I went into it, me being so naive of dancing and having a much greater appreciation, especially for the athleticism it takes. I remember going through the footage and I'm like, oh my gosh, these dancers are so ripped. Like there's no fat on them. It's crazy. But that being said, at first I was like, all right, so let's do the full run through like 5 or 6 times. And Steph looked at me and she's like, how about 2? And I'm like, okay, 2 it is. But yeah, we shot the full thing at a wider angle 2 times because it is a lot of effort, and they're long performances. And then from that, as Stephanie was doing the choreography, from the beginning, I came into a few sessions and watched, and we kind of, we filmed it on our phones and then picked out like sections later that we knew we wanted to get inserts of those. So as fluid as it was filming and kind of the movement, it was pretty pre-planned and what we wanted to capture from a wide and then to a close-up.
Thanks, Zach. We have another question from Marissa, and I think this should be directed first to Stephanie and then to Emmy. Marissa's asking, was there anything you liked or disliked more by creating for film rather than a live audience? So I'm curious to hear the choreographer's perspective on that question from Stephanie, and then also the dancer's perspective from Emmy.
So I think what I loved about film, and Emmy touched on this a little bit, was the ability to get it right. I think there's a beauty in live theater that once the curtain goes up, the show must go on. And and as a choreographer, you're taking yourself and you're very vulnerable and putting your trust into your dancers and hoping that they don't make a mistake, or hoping that technically something doesn't go wrong. I think and there's such a beauty in authenticity. What I love about that. But on the flip side, it is nice to have the ability that if there isn't a shot that looked quite right, that we could go back, and I think this is the first time that I've been able to enjoy that, to actually do a film with a incredibly creative film director who had a beautiful vision, and together we knew what we were looking for, but yet if it wasn't quite right there, we had the opportunity to go back and fix it until we felt good about what we were looking for.
Thanks, Stephanie. Emmy, what would you add from your perspective as a dancer?
Yeah, going off of that. So the same idea, the perfection that you strive for in the film is definitely desired. I really enjoyed that process, but I think nothing really beats having a live audience and having that energy with you on stage, and you having those nerves and those excitement butterflies to really perform on the live theater in front of the live audience. Despite what happens or what goes wrong, you still have that energy and that adrenaline that really goes through your body. So I think that is a little lost. It's just a different energy, a different type of excitement for the filming. So I think you still get that adrenaline, that drive, but it's just knowing that I can do this over again if that didn't go as well. So I think it's just a different perspective, but definitely the live audience and the live energy and the clapping after and feeling the excitement and the proud relief after it's done. It's just a different feeling and experience rather than on film.
Mm-hmm. Well, we have another question from Anne, roughly. She asks, what factors did you consider in selecting the locations? Were there certain aspects that you were looking for? And I know I can answer the first piece of that. And then Stephanie, you might want to tag on. This was happening during the throes of the pandemic when, we were still, a lot of places were in shutdown. A lot of office buildings were closed. Theaters obviously were closed. So one piece of that puzzle was where we could get in, because so many places were closed. And then Stephanie, maybe you want to speak to why these particular locations sort of served as inspiration for the work that you created.
I think, as you mentioned, we had to think creatively. There were other, locations. I think it was important for us, I think Zach and I, to create. We wanted to be in spaces that would help tell the story. So architecturally, I think those we had kind of a list of different locations that we would have thought would work for us. But then it really came down to who was available, who we could get into the space, and which spaces we weren't able to get into. And then once we had kind of a list of the few locations that we could work with, then we looked at each location and really tried to pair it with the story that we were trying to tell for each tango. Is kind of how we choose which location to do which duet.
Zach, do you have anything to add as far as, this from the film editing perspective? Once you got into these locations and you saw the dance and you had the raw footage, did the space influence your editing or the tone that you took in your editing?
I'd say yes, but less on like the actual cutting of it. I would say like the actual category, sure, the cutting, the happier ones a little bit more longer, kind of flowy, but more so in the color grading, the spaces really had an influence in that way, really trying to complement the colors that match the feeling with the location. But most of that was still done prior. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely parts of it that's done in the post.
Well, and for those of you who were asking, the locations, the first duet was the Crystal Gallery at the DIA. And then the second one, Stephanie, correct me if I'm wrong, this is where we went to the Scarab Club, or was that Meadowbrook next for the second duet?
That was Meadowbrook.
Second duet was Meadowbrook.
Okay. And then the third duet was
also Meadowbrook.
Then it was the Scarab Club and then the Guardian Building.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, we have another question from Gerald, and he was asking, was this choreographed as 5 duets, or did you modify it for the film? So I think the essence here is, was this created previously, or was this specifically created for the film?
The actual movement was created. Each tango was created as a separate entity. I workshopped with all of the dancers. Each tango in the studio space on its own, and we built the movement for each tango separately.
Question about costuming. Who did the costumes?
Krista Coroner did all of the costumes, and myself, we collaborated together. Most of the pieces were constructed by Krista.
Okay. And can you speak to maybe Emmy? Sorry to put you on the spot. Could you speak to how, as a dancer, the costuming lends itself to your portrayal of the character or your performance?
Yeah, so for mine specifically, I had a flowy skirt that was also pants. So I think that definitely added to my character and my aspect. It was Despertar, so I was definitely reaching for Tyler and really trying to feel that energy and feeling that love and that connection. So I think the skirt added that sense of flow and the sense of release and ease with the tension of the pants as well. So I think that costuming for me definitely catered toward the piece. But then if you watch like Tara and Mikey's, theirs is more the red and the black, the last piece. You can feel the tension, you can feel the fear within the costume. So I think that already from the start, before you even see the piece, already put that mindset into your head so that you get that clear vision of what Steph was going for in that piece. And then with the music and everything, it just adds to heighten that energy that you're trying to portray. So I think the costuming did an amazing job throughout each duet.
So, I was going to kind of jump to, some of the overall comments here were just about, the fusion of the spaces, the costuming, the musicians. Like, it was such a collaborative effort. And as I mentioned before, the Detroit Institute of Art was really the driving force behind seeing this through to make sure the project still happened, even though it couldn't be done on stage. And from where I'm sitting, I just think this was an absolutely brilliant collaboration. Now, granted, I'm a little bit biased being the executive director for Eisenhower Dance Detroit, but I think it became something bigger than even any of us as collaborators originally imagined. Anyone want to kind of speak to that at all?
Yeah, when I had first reached out to Zach, I don't think Zach had a clear picture of what exactly he was getting himself into when we first started to talk. It was going to be this little short film. And then, as we started kind of talking and continuing to collaborate, it kind of grew. And as we kept diving into it, it just grew bigger. And then we had more locations, and then it just kept getting bigger. And then, once you started bringing all the elements in and seeing the actual venues that we were going to be at, bringing in the camera work, and it just was way more than I could have ever anticipated when we first started with this little seed of an idea, of doing these 5 tangos in different locations. It all kind of sounded like it would be fun, not to the magnitude I think that it has grown into. I'm incredibly proud of the work, and it's been a true joy to work, with Zach, the Detroit Institute of Arts, and Larry Bransky. We're just such a wonderful partnership in helping us realize the project as a whole. And it was just a really wonderful experience for it being my very first time to work with a producer and film director. So yeah, it was fun. I'm not sure how Zach felt about it, but he was great.
Emmy had something to say. Jump in, Emmy.
I also think us as dancers are so familiar with how we work and how we do our rehearsals and our shows and whatnot. So going into the filming and really seeing the directors and seeing Zach and have his whole crew set up, and they had like cameras on tracks and everything. And it was just a whole different world of art that we never really get to see. So I think seeing them and their passion and seeing them create as artists in their own realm. So I think that mashed together, they don't work with dancers as much. We don't work with film as much. So really doing that collaboration opened my eyes to all different realms of dance on film. So I think that was really eye-opening, because you see it on film, you see it on TV and whatnot, but really seeing the behind the scenes process of the smoke machine and what, like how little an angle can change everything is just so interesting as a dancer that we never really get to see that. We just are so used to our own stage and our own proscenium stage. So I think that's a really interesting experience.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, go ahead, Zach. I think, were you going to jump in?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think for all of us, from the film team perspective, it was really refreshing to film something like this, where a lot of times we're kind of stuck to a shot sheet and a script where, you know, we could totally manipulate and kind of like there's so much fluidity in dance, and there is in film too, but often a lot of times it's a bit more like controlled. But I think a piece like this, you know, for both kind of sides, it was a chance to really kind of play jazz, as we like to say, where, you know, everyone's kind of working off of each other, and we're all in the same flow. So yeah, I know I was very excited, and hope to continue to work in dance through film, and so was our crew.
Well, and the other interesting piece to note for folks is that, you know, the bandoneon player, JP Joffrey, very, very well-known bandoneon player, absolutely amazing. For the musicians out there in the audience, and those familiar with the bandoneon, definitely know, you know, what an incredible artist he is. He actually recorded his portion in a studio in New York City. Am I right, Stephanie and Zach? And then he sent that over, and then Zach, you had to layer that over.
I didn't personally, but our really talented editor did.
Fantastic. And Stephanie, was the original production intended to be done to live music? And was that an important piece to keep for you when you shifted to film?
I think that, yes, it was intended to be live. And I'm still hoping that one day we will be able to see the entire production live on stage with live musicians. But it was important to us to keep that live element. So we were able to bring together the 4 musicians because they were here in the States, in the state of Michigan, and were able to be at the filming, so we could film them live with in tandem with the dancers. But as you were saying, the bandoneon player was in New York City, and at the time we weren't able to travel, so we recorded the string portion the day that we filmed at the DIA all of the pieces of music, and then the bandoneon player had separately recorded his own in New York, and it was sent here to Detroit. And then, as Zach was saying, then they had to layer that onto the other live recording.
Well,
so the things you do during COVID, you gotta think creatively.
Exactly. You all took some real significant roadblocks and turned them into some really interesting opportunities. I'm so thrilled with how this project turned out. And we have one final question from Gerald Salerno. Are we going to see more dance on film from EDD and Zazu Creative Studio?
Sure, I hope so. It was great fun. The dancers enjoyed it. We just were so inspired by Zach's crew and Zach himself. He's so talented, and we can't wait to do more.
Zach, is that a thumbs up from you too?
Yeah. Hey, if you keep choreographing, we'll keep filming.
There you go.
Sounds like a good answer to Gerald's question. So we're going to finish things off this evening with Stephanie. Let me just kind of turn those final words over to you to send us off into our evening.
I just would like to personally thank each and every one of you that came tonight for this world premiere of the Five Tangos. This has been truly in a first-time experience for myself, for the dance company, and we were so thrilled to have the support of the DIA, as well as Zach's incredible work. So thank you again for joining us tonight, and we certainly hope to see you again, maybe viewing a film, or hopefully one day in the live theater and able to see the entire production on stage. Have a wonderful evening and a wonderful holiday. Thank you for joining us tonight. Take care.